Hello and welcome to Airheads, a not-so-serious look at the serious business of royal rumours, gossip and gowns. I'm Tom.
And I'm Maeve.
And this week, you're just back from a pretty exciting event.
Oh my god, Tom, I saw Prince Harry tonight. I know we've seen him before, but this was in a sort of different venue. He was presenting an award and making a speech at the Onside Awards in the Royal Albert Hall.
So glamorous.
I know. It was very exciting. I got a ticket through work, which is why I was there. It's the first time they've had this awards show. They're basically youth clubs for children in deprived areas. They're called Onside Youth Zones. And 50,000 young people have access to them around the UK, where they do art and they do sport and music and stuff like that. And it was like this awards show for particular kids and groups, and they did like lots of rapping and lots of flips and lots of cool stuff like that as well. I'm sure
Did Harry do any flips?
Unfortunately not, but I'm sure he was taking videos on his phone to show Meghan when he gets home, because I'm sure she loves a cool backflip.
I love the videos that you took because he is such a rock star.
Oh my god, he came out and people screamed. Like when we went to see Harry Styles and there was that shrieking, like a noise unlike anything else you hear in the world. And people were screaming, "I love you, Harry, we love you," cheering so loudly. It took ages before they calmed down, before he could start his speech. He spoke for like 8 minutes and it was actually a very good speech. Like, I've seen some of his speeches before and they kind of drag on a little bit, and maybe I was just kind of dazzled from his dazzlingness, but I thought his public speaking skills have come on a good bit. Meghan's influence, I think.
And he quoted her, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, when he came out, he had a bit of a rock star about him, because he was like, "It feels so good to be here." And he was saying, "I've been to lots of events here in this building, but the energy tonight is truly something special." And they love that.
Anyone talking about the energy is a rock star in my mind.
He was announcing that the youth zones will now have access to services from the school's mental health charity called Place to Be. And he was speaking about the importance of understanding your mental health as much as your physical health. And then, yes, he quoted Meghan. He said, "By knowing what makes us thrive rather than just survive, we'll be unlocking such incredible potential for ourselves and more young people up and down the country." Great moment.
Really good.
And he also spoke about Greta Thunberg. He called her Greta because he knew that everyone in the room would know exactly who she was. And he was saying you should never underestimate the power and the influence of youth. How every country, every community, every school, every friendship group, every family needs their own Greta.
Amazing to be bigged up like that by Prince Harry.
I know. And then he presented the award. It was the Health and Wellbeing Award to a group called Strong Sisters from the Blackburn Youth Zone. There were like these 8 girls between 11 and 19 who did a project on inspirational women from diverse backgrounds. It was all about challenging stereotypes and prejudice. And they seemed to love it. It was very nice.
Well, I also had quite a memorable afternoon. I went to Pizza Express in Woking.
Tom, I'm sure this is an evening you'll never forget.
I'd say if I was asked about it 10 years from now, I would remember it immediately.
What about 18 years?
Yeah, we decided we had to do a bonus episode. We were going to take the week off, but Andrew's interview was totally mad.
I can't believe it. I mean, we spent all that time doing those 4 episodes about The Crown, and then Newsnight comes in and steamrolls Netflix with this incredible hour of television. So we're just going to run through some of the most, like, what the fuck moments from this truly gripping programme.
And there are so many of them. Well, first off, why do you think he actually did it?
After watching it, I am more confused than ever. Going into it, I thought, is this possibly something to do with the fact that his daughter, Princess Beatrice, and her fiancé, Eduardo Mopelli-Mozzi, have not announced the date for their wedding yet? And we spoke last week about how there's been some debate over the venue and they can't agree on a venue. And I was wondering, is somebody in the palace saying, you've got to clear up all of this before Beatrice's wedding? Maybe he thought this would really draw a line under it. But clearly, absolutely not the case.
No, this was a total car crash and it's given everyone so much more to talk about. I was so surprised he did it because I really didn't get the feeling that the papers were hounding him to do something like this. And, you know, if I was him, I obviously would have just stopped going to all the events that he does and just sit it out for a few months. But even with him doing public appearances, it hasn't been all this scrutiny on him and, you know, clamouring for him to say something.
His own reasons for why he spoke out were, first of all, he said, because there's no good time to talk about Mr. Epstein and all things associated. And he mentioned that his team had been talking to Newsnight about doing something around the work that he's been doing. And unfortunately, we've just not been able to fit it into either of our schedules. As he says this, the camera shows the interviewer, Emily Maitlis, like with this little smirk on her face.
Surprisingly, when he said, "I'll talk about Epstein," they were like, "Oh, I think we've got a window."
But then later, towards the end, he said that the reason why he was doing this interview was because of social media, like mean comments, maybe, from trolls, and how that was affecting his mental health.
This is not a mental health issue. I'm sure he's worrying about it a lot, but I think it does a real disservice to people who actually are struggling.
But also, he must have seen that Meghan and Harry talking about their mental health in a documentary didn't go down very well with certain quarters of the British public, and you wonder why he thought it would be any better for him. He clearly thought he was charming and intelligent and articulate enough to get by with this and convince everybody, but oh my god.
I really think that he said mental health because he thought, oh, it's just like a buzzword that I can get people to be sympathetic. Like, that clearly shows how he thinks of mental health issues as well. Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with some of our most outrageous moments. I mean, to start with, on a milder note, he is really emphasising that he and Epstein were not close friends. It would be a considerable stretch to say they were close friends because they only met max 3 times a year. But, like, I don't see some of my closest friends 3 times a year.
Especially when you don't live in the same country.
Yeah, that means nothing. And he says that the bit he remembers from their friendship is going to dinner parties and meeting academics, politicians and people from the United Nations, a cosmopolitan group of US eminence.
Right, okay. Because I don't think there's any other way that Andrew could have met these people other than by going to Epstein's parties, right?
He makes it sound like such an intellectual event when, like, the people at that dinner party in New York in 2010 were Woody Allen, his wife Soon-Yi, the comedian Chelsea Handler, and the TV presenters Katie Couric and George Stephanopoulos. And I know the latter two are involved in politics, but, you know.
Yeah, they're not exactly like Professor Emerit at Harvard. And...
Yeah, exactly. You really liked his comments about being a party prince, though, didn't you?
I'm so fascinated as to what his definition of a party is, because he says on being called a party prince, that's also a bit of a stretch. I don't know why I've collected that title, because I never have really partied. And when he's accused of going to a party that was a 10-person dinner party, he looked so confused, like, you idiot, that's a dinner party, that's not a party.
He goes, there certainly wasn't a party. It was more of a small dinner party. There was only 8 or 10 of us there. And she's like, okay, so were you guest of honour at this dinner party? And he full on scoffs at her. He's like, yeah, there was a dinner and I was there, so, like...
What an asshole.
So obnoxious.
But don't forget, he is an engaging person. I think if you have to remind people that you're an engaging person, you're maybe doing something wrong. You're not as engaging as you think.
I want to be able to engage. I want to learn. My goodness. But anyway, she does confront him about why he went to stay with Epstein in 2010 after he'd been convicted. And this is the bit where clearly he's been coached, and he, throughout the interview, you know, he's blinking rapidly, he's stuttering and stammering quite frequently, but in this bit, he kind of holds it together a little bit more, I think. He's like, right, I have always, ever since this has happened and since it has become public knowledge that I was there, I've questioned myself and why did I go? And he says that he went with the sole purpose of saying to him that because he had been convicted, it was inappropriate for us to be seen together, which is such
That doesn't mean they're not going to hang out.
I know, they just can't be seen doing it. And he says that he had people advising him both to go, but like also not to go. And he took the judgment call that because this was serious, doing it over the telephone was the chicken's way of doing it. Oh my God, the chicken's way. And I had to go see him. This person who was really definitely not a very, very close friend, and who I only saw once, twice, max 3 times a year. But I had to go see him. Emily Maitlis asks, was any of that advice coming from the palace? And he's like, no. Like, anytime she brings up the palace or any suggestion of the Queen, he's like shutting it down.
Yeah.
You can almost see him like sweating.
Emily Maitlis obviously questions why he stayed with Epstein when he went to break up with him. And he said, oh, well, it's a convenient place to stay. Does it look that convenient now, though, Andrew?
I mean, even then, I guess it is reflective of him having that kind of stingy attitude to money that some like old money people have. They have plenty to spend on a hotel or on some other kind of private residence, but they're like, oh, well, I can stay at that guy's house for free and it's going to be really nice, so whatever.
Yeah.
My favourite part of this totally ridiculous conversation was when he admitted that it was definitely the wrong thing to do. But at the time I felt that it was the honourable and right thing to do. I admit fully that my judgment was probably coloured by my tendency to be too honourable. But that's just the way it is.
This sentence is crazy.
Can you imagine saying that with a straight face? Like, can you imagine saying that to me, even with a straight face? You just couldn't.
No
How
way.
arrogant do you have to be to think that you can pull off a line like, my tendency to be too honourable?
When you're going to see a convicted sex offender.
You just have no self-awareness in that case, and also in this interview. He also has this really ridiculous look of faux surprise.
Oh yeah, this was like acting class, like his RADA training.
He could take some tips from Meghan Markle.
Oh,
here.
Definitely. I mean, I don't think she'd give them, but yeah, when he learned that John Brockman had seen him having his feet rubbed by the Russian girl. Really?
Then again, when she brings up that third encounter that Virginia Roberts alleges that happened, the orgy on the Caribbean island, again, he acts like this is the first time he's hearing about this.
Yeah.
It's absurd.
I mean, one of my favourite quotes at this point in the interview was
and she gives him multiple opportunities to say that he regrets this friendship with Epstein. Like, she asks him at least a couple of times. And the first time, so she asks him, does he regret staying there? And he's like, yeah, I do. But when she asks, do you regret the whole friendship? He hesitates. He takes this deep breath. He's like immediately stuttering. And he's like, no, still not. And the reason being that the people I met and the opportunities that were given to me to learn either by him or because of him were actually very useful.
He's dead. Just say that you regret the friendship.
It's outrageous. Like, so much of this is so clearly about classism and this group of elite, powerful men who do each other favours, and how they can get away with this without thinking about people outside of that group because, well, you know, whatever about those girls, but he was actually very useful to me professionally.
And, I mean, like we said, he doesn't need to rely on Epstein to meet the people that he says he needs to meet. So he could have had these relationships without Epstein at all. So why doesn't he just say he regrets it?
But we've got to get into the real meat of this interview, which is his response to Virginia Roberts' allegations. The whole conversation that they have about Virginia's claims that they went dancing in Tramp nightclub in London in 2001, and then they went back to Ghislaine Maxwell's home and she was forced to have sex with him. We've heard him before give absolutely wild defences to this. We've heard his friends saying that they think the photo has been photoshopped because Andrew's fingers are too chubby and he's too tall and he doesn't dress like that.
He couldn't quite bring himself to actually describe his fingers as chubby in this interview, but he did say and not say that the photo might possibly not have been doctored. It's impossible to tell.
Yeah, he didn't come down on either side of that one, and it was very confusing. But his alibi for the night out in Tramp is something else.
It's incredible. So he says that, I know that the day we now understand as the date, which is the 10th of March, I had taken Beatrice to a Pizza Express in Woking for a party at 4 or 5 p.m.
Wow. I think we all know that you do not go to a nightclub at 4 or 5 p.m, that those things happen at different times in the day. But also, can you tell me any date in your life you've been to a Pizza Express?
No, I absolutely could not.
And we haven't even been to Pizza Express that many times, so it would be memorable, just as he explains when she asks, with this kind of disbelief, why would you remember a Pizza Express birthday party? Like, can you imagine having to ask a member of the royal family that question? And he says, because going to a Pizza Express in Woking is a very unusual thing for me to do. I've been to Woking only a couple of times. I remember it weirdly, specifically. As soon as someone reminded me I'd been there, I said, oh yeah, I remember.
Yeah, I bet you fucking
now
did.
that it's very convenient for me, I remember.
Yeah.
But again, like, using his kids as a shield. You know, we were speculating that the news about Beatrice's engagement came out at a very interesting time in the middle of all this. And again, poor Beatrice is roped in as an alibi. Even better than the Pizza Express in Woking, though, was this shocking medical condition we learned about.
This is so funny because I'm trying to decide who on Andrew's team was like, what about these references to you sweating, Andrew? Is there something we could do about this? Because I feel like it must have been him being like, I don't want to be described as sweaty. So he says that there's a slight problem with the sweating because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat. Or I didn't sweat at that time. And that was it? Yes. I didn't sweat at that time because I had suffered what I would describe as an overdose of adrenaline in the Falklands War when I was shot at. And it was almost impossible for me to sweat. And it's only because I've done a number of things in the recent past that I'm starting to be able to do that again. So I'm afraid to say that there's a medical condition that says I didn't do it, so therefore.
Like, what I would describe as an overdose of adrenaline, not what any medical professional would describe. And already the newspapers today have had doctors and other medical experts saying, what the hell is this medical condition? But that moment, because he starts out by being like, there are a number of things wrong with Virginia's story. One is that I don't know where the bar is in Tramp, that I don't drink. I don't think I've ever bought a drink in Tramps whenever I was there. And it's like, okay, these are so flimsy. Oh my God, I can't believe he's even saying this. And then he breaks out this sweat story, this sweaty condition. Because obviously he took a lot of offense to her repeated descriptions of him being covered in sweat, dripping with sweat, hideous sweaty dancer. She says it all the time, and that's what makes it so memorable. Like, it's a very clever way to describe it. It paints a very clear picture.
And, you know, it kind of clearly has worked because it's goaded him into giving this crazy excuse.
This unforgettable excuse. And absolutely unbelievable. And already I saw somebody had found an archive story from the Sunday World, a Dublin newspaper, which recounted Andrew's nights out in New York when he'd broken up with Fergie, and how he would be going to nightclubs and he would be covered in a film of sweat. And how even at the time people noticed that he was sweaty, like back when we were talking about how he doesn't wear those clothes when he goes to nightclubs. We were looking at pictures of him wearing an almost identical outfit to the outfit he wears in the photo of Virginia when he was at China White's a few months around the time of this photo being taken. And again, he looked pretty sweaty.
But he denies ever wearing anything like that in London because when I'm out in London, I wear a suit and tie. But those look more like my travelling clothes.
Amazing. I'm amazed. I can't believe it. To say when there are clear photos of you, like the one I just mentioned, out at China White the club in London in a shirt and trousers, just like in that picture. Like, does he not have anybody who can check this stuff for him before he goes out?
This really doesn't come across as an interview that he's been prepped for.
Especially when he gives his views on the sex act.
Well, without putting too fine a point on it, if you're a man, it's a positive act to have sex with somebody. You have to take some sort of positive action, and so therefore if you try to forget, it's very difficult to try and forget a positive action, and I do not remember anything. I don't think having sex with Andrew is a positive action. I'm going to say that right now.
Does Andrew remember every erection he's ever had?
They're all burned into his brain.
In the file next to Pizza Express visits. Like, that he has this logbook where he keeps track of all these positive actions.
Is there a Venn diagram? Is there an intersection between the Pizza Express visits and the erection memories?
I mean, on the one hand, I really wanted Emily Maitlis to press him further on this, but then also I was seeing myself in the situation and being absolutely dumbstruck and possibly never being able to speak again.
We should say at this point that Emily Maitlis did such a good job.
Oh my god, what a rock star. She's got to win some kind of journalism award for this.
Yeah, so good. He, at one point, actually at quite a lot of points, looks like a cross baby. And he's doing all
so
this,
pouty,
looking up at the sky, at the ceiling, like rolling his eyes, just waiting for it to be over.
Or possibly being like, why did I get myself into this? How do I get out? I'm trapped. I cannot help myself. I'm digging a hole. But maybe not, because he kept going on with this staggering confidence. As much as he stammered and blinked and all that, he wasn't deterred, and he approached every question like it was the first one. And particularly when she asked about what effect the Epstein scandal has had on his family. I thought maybe when it came to the royal family, he would have shut down a little bit, but no, he was very open about it. He said, "It has been what I describe as a constant sore within the family. We all knew him." My God, close family friend. And if we have a conversation, we are all left with, what on earth happened? How did he do what he did? It is a constant gnaw. But he is quick to point out that the wider family couldn't be more supportive.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting.
As we know.
Yeah, we know that the Queen's going to support him whatever happens.
We'll never forget that picture the day after Epstein died of the two of them in the car.
But, you know, that does raise the question of how supportive or how convinced are Beatrice and Eugenie.
As he says, the immediate family were asking, what's all this about? His daughters are clever. They're people out in the world, you know, they're not totally sheltered from this kind of stuff.
They're not going to be convinced by this no sweating story.
Particularly when Eugenie works with an anti-sex trafficking charity.
Yeah, I mean, it's very sad actually, this bit, when you start thinking about that family, those kids.
I know. I don't know how Beatrice's wedding can go ahead like this.
Yeah.
It's just hanging over it. But again, he could have done a lot to help himself if he had just clearly and explicitly said that he regrets his friendship with Epstein and he is disgusted by what Epstein has done.
Yeah, and he refused to do it. I mean, he'd almost got to the end of this interview. He had, 5 minutes left?
Yeah.
And he said, "Do I regret the fact that he has quite obviously conducted himself in a manner that is considered unbecoming? Yes."
And this is kind of the one bit where Emily Maitlis can't keep a straight face. And she says, unbecoming. He was a sex offender.
To which Andrew says, "Yeah, sorry, I'm being polite." In the sense that he was a sex offender.
Why do you have to be polite about a sex offender?
A dead sex offender.
And a convicted one. It's shocking. And again, it just shows he has no empathy for these girls, the girls who were trafficked by Epstein, the girls that he was convicted of abusing. There are so many opportunities here where he could have expressed sympathy for them, where he could have mentioned them at all. And he didn't.
Yeah, and he denied seeing anything ever at any one of Epstein's properties. And this is despite the fact that he also said that he was a patron of the NSPCC, the National Society for the Protection of Children.
And that he would have known all the signs of abuse of children, but he didn't see a single thing. And then he later said, well, he wasn't looking for them anyway.
Yeah.
And then we get to the last bit where he again hammers the point home that he doesn't think there was anything wrong with hanging out with Epstein before he was convicted. But after, that's the bit that, as it were, I kick myself for on a daily basis, because it was not something that was becoming of a member of the royal family. And we try and uphold the highest standards and practices, and I let the side down. Simple as that. Like, if I knew anything about sports, I would make some kind of sports analogy here. But he's talking like a badly behaved footballer, right?
Yeah. It seems like his main regret is that he's made things difficult for the royal family rather than all these girls.
Absolutely. And this whole interview just really calls into question the monarchy. Why do we have a monarchy?
I mean, quite apart from the possibility that he did terrible things, he also seems like an idiot.
Absolutely. Why does this guy, by virtue of the family he was being born into, get these jobs like trade envoy, patron for very important organisations like the NSPCC, who are now distancing themselves from him, you know, understandably, and just because of who his mom is, even though he's clearly unqualified to do pretty much anything.
Yeah, but don't worry. He made the wrong judgment and decision for the right reasons, Maeve. Because he's honourable.
He's too honourable, if anything.
Ugh, that line to me just sticks out.
And at the end, he still seems to be delighted with his performance, and he tells Emily Maitlis, "I'm truly grateful you've given me the opportunity to discuss this," and it ends with him smiling. Ooh. Has he not learned anything from that ridiculous photo of him with the huge, like, shit-eating grin on his face after Epstein has died?
Yeah.
He's completely oblivious.
He hasn't learned anything. He probably thinks he did a great job.
Watching this was painful. Like, it was hilarious at times, but at other times, it just made you so angry that a person like this has this privilege and this position. What now? Where does he go from here? He says he's going to keep working on his projects, and that's how he'll reconnect with the British public. But is that going to work with you, member of the British public?
I mean, I do think he's just going to go back to work. I wonder at one point it's going to sink in that everyone's making fun of him and that no one believes him. But I honestly think he's so stupid and pig-headed that he's just going to continue as he has been.
I do wonder what impact this is going to have on Beatrice's wedding. It's definitely not going to be televised. We knew that was likely anyway, but in no way. And I don't think there's going to be any public funds going into that.
No way. It's going to be under so much scrutiny, and oh my god, the guest list is going to be vetted to within an inch of its life.
I just feel terrible for her. But if you want some diversion from all of this, you should go and watch Netflix's The Crown Season 3 if you haven't already. There's even an episode in which the royal family does a documentary inside Buckingham Palace that backfires. But not as badly as this one. We're
going to take next week off, but we'll be back after then in time for Archie's first Thanksgiving.
And in the meantime, we've got 4 royal recaps of The Crown. Episodes there live already, so as you're watching The Crown, you can listen along with us, and you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at AirheadsPod and on Facebook at Airheads.
If you like the episode, please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts, or tell a friend.
Thank you so much for listening, and have a great week.
Bye.
There's a slight problem with the sweating